Time had always been Tyrell Freeman's ally. While Wall Street executives rushed past his humble sidewalk repair table, they never noticed how the skilled black watchmaker's fingers held the precision to restore what others deemed broken beyond repair. So when CEO Derek Langford tossed his malfunctioning Rolex onto Tyrell's weathered workspace with a sneering, "Fix this, and it's yours," he didn't expect the watch to tick perfectly 3 minutes later. What the wealthy white executive couldn't know was that the circuit inside his luxury timepiece had been designed by Tyrell himself. The same design stolen 18 years ago by corporate thieves who left its creator repairing watches on the street while they built empires. As the crowd gasped at Tyrell's effortless repair, something more significant than a watch began ticking. The countdown to a reckoning that would restore both time and truth to their rightful owner. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers of Wall Street, casting long shadows over the street vendors who had already set up shop before the day's first traders arrived. Among them was Tyrell Freeman, his weathered hands arranging an assortment of watches across a folding table. At 39, lines had begun to form around his eyes, but they only served to accentuate his warm, attentive gaze. "Morning, Mr. Freeman," called out Wendy, a barista from the corner coffee shop. She placed a steaming cup on the edge of his table. "On the house today. Appreciate you." Tyrell nodded, his voice deep and steady. He took a sip and turned back to the vintage pocket watch in his hands. His fingers moved with the precision of a surgeon, each motion deliberate and confident. Tyrell's spot near Wall Street wasn't glamorous, but it was strategic. For 8 years, he'd maintained his modest repair business here, becoming a fixture among the food carts and souvenir sellers. His reputation spread through word of mouth. If you had something broken, especially if it told time, Tyrell could fix it. "Dad, I packed extra batteries." Nia Freeman appeared at his side, dropping her backpack next to the table. At 16, she already had her father's sharp eyes and meticulous nature, though her energy moved at a different pace. Quick, eager, forward-looking. "Thanks, baby girl," Tyrell said, accepting the small package. "You got your physics test today, right?" Nia nodded, adjusting her glasses. "Yep, and I need that A if I want any shot at those engineering schools." Tyrell's expression softened. His daughter's dreams of college hung over their small household like a distant star, beautiful, essential, but requiring tremendous effort to reach. Their apartment in Brooklyn was modest, 2 bedrooms, walls lined with books on engineering and physics, and a small workstation where Tyrell often stayed up late, tinkering with watches too complex to fix during his regular hours. "You're gonna crush it," he said, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Just like you crush everything." After Nia left for school, Tyrell settled into his morning routine. An elderly woman brought him her husband's anniversary watch with a broken clasp. A street performer needed his digital timer fixed for his act. A tourist asked if Tyrell could replace a battery in her travel clock. For each, he charged fair prices, sometimes just accepting whatever they could afford. By noon, the financial district pulsed with its typical frenetic energy. Suits rushed by, phones pressed to ears, eyes rarely meeting those of the vendors they passed daily. Most were too consumed with markets and meetings to notice the quiet craftsman on the corner point 6 blocks away, in a gleaming 50-story building. With his name emblazoned above the entrance, Derek Langford was having a very different kind of morning. "Where the hell is Rodriguez with those projections?" he barked into his phone, pacing across his corner office. At 47, Derek had the polished look of success, tailored navy suit, expertly styled salt and pepper hair, and a perpetual expression of impatient authority. His assistant, Melissa, appeared in the doorway. "The tech reporter from Business Insider is here for your interview, Mr. Langford." Derek glanced at his Rolex Daytona, a limited edition model worth more than what most of his employees made in 6 months. "Fine. Send her in. And tell Rodriguez I need those numbers before my 2 o'clock. The interview began smoothly. Derek spoke about Langtech's latest innovation, a luxury smartwatch that promised to revolutionize the market. It paired with phones, tracked fitness, and displayed notifications, all while maintaining the aesthetic of a high-end timepiece. The watch retailed for $6,000, and pre-orders were through the roof. So this is positioning Lang Tech firmly in the luxury tech space, said the reporter, taking notes. A departure from your earlier mass-market products. Status matters, Derek replied, leaning back in his leather chair. People don't just want function, they want distinction. Our customers understand that wearing a Lang Tech watch says something about who they are. Derek raised his wrist to display his own watch, not a Lang Tech product, but his prized Rolex. Take this piece. It's not just about telling time. It's about, he stopped mid-sentence, frowning. The second hand on his Rolex had stuttered, then frozen completely. He tapped the face, but nothing happened. Problem? The reporter asked. Just a minor glitch, Derek said, quickly lowering his arm. Nothing serious. But after the interview, Derek summoned his assistant. Get someone to fix this. Now. Within an hour, 3 different technicians had examined the watch. None could identify the problem. The mechanism is complex, sir, one explained nervously. It might need to go back to the manufacturer. That'll take weeks. Derek slammed his hand on the desk. I have the investors' gala tonight. Fix it. We've tried everything, Mr. Langford, another technician said. It needs specialized repair. Derek dismissed them with a wave. His mood darkened as the afternoon progressed, meetings blurring together. As he periodically glanced at his lifeless Rolex, the BY 4 o'clock, he was rushing between buildings for an emergency board meeting. The sidewalks were crowded, forcing him to weave through tourists and vendors. That's when he spotted Tyrell's table. He slowed, observing the neat array of watches and the focused black man carefully examining a pocket watch. Several customers stood nearby, waiting patiently. Something about the scene, the simplicity, the lack of pretension, irritated Derek. Impulsively, he stepped toward the table. Busy day at the junk shop? He asked, his voice carrying a hint of mockery. Tyrell looked up calmly, taking in Derek's expensive suit, shiny shoes, and general air of superiority. Just helping folks keep track of their time, sir. Something I can do for you. The people around the table fell silent, sensing the tension. Derek's lip curled slightly as he glanced at the humble display of watches. Actually, Derek said, removing his Rolex, my watch stopped. Think you can fix a real timepiece? Or just the cheap stuff? Tyrell didn't react to the jab. I can try, sir. He extended his hand. Derek hesitated, then placed the luxury watch in Tyrell's palm. Sure you know which end is which on something like this? He asked, loud enough for passers-by to hear that a small crowd began to gather. Derek enjoyed the attention, standing taller. Tell you what, he continued, his voice carrying across the sidewalk. Fix this. Right here, right now, and the watch is yours. He laughed, gesturing to the onlookers. That's a $35,000 Rolex, folks. Think our friend here has a chance. Whispers rippled through the gathering crowd. Some people took out phones, sensing a potential viral moment in the making. Tyrell didn't speak. He simply turned the watch over and examined it carefully, his expression neutral. With methodical movements, he reached for a small leather case tucked under his table. From it, he withdrew a set of precision tools that looked surprisingly professional. Derek's smile faltered slightly as Tyrell selected a tiny screwdriver and deftly removed the back panel of the watch. The crowd leaned closer, with practiced hands. Tyrell inspected the internal mechanism. After a moment, he reached for a magnifying loupe, securing it over one eye to examine something minuscule within the watch. Ah, he said softly, almost to himself. There you are. The crowd was silent now. Even Derek had stopped smirking, watching intently as Tyrell's steady fingers made a microscopic adjustment to one of the gears. Then, using what looked like a dental pick, he gently removed a tiny speck of corrosion from a circuit connection. 3 minutes passed in total silence. Then Tyrell reassembled the watch, gave it a gentle shake, and held it up. Tick, tick, tick. The second hand moved smoothly around the dial once more. The crowd erupted in applause and amazed murmurs. That's impossible, Derek blurted, his face flushing. Tyrell handed the watch back. Just needed a gear realignment and some corrosion cleaned from the circuit. It should keep good time now. Derek stared at the functioning Rolex, then at Tyrell, his expression shifting from disbelief to embarrassment to anger. The crowd watched expectantly. Well, someone called out. I guess he earned that watch. Derek's jaw tightened. He shoved the Rolex back onto his wrist and reached for his wallet. Just luck, he muttered, pulling out a $20 bill and tossing it onto the table. Here. Tyrell didn't touch the money. No charge, he said quietly. Have a good day, sir. The crowd's murmurs turned disapproving. Derek, suddenly aware of the many phones recording the interaction, snatched up his 20 and walked away stiffly, shoving through the gathered onlookers. The crowd dispersed, discussing what they'd witnessed. One woman lingered. Zoe Chun, a tech journalist in her early 30s, had been on her way to interview a startup founder when the commotion caught her attention. She watched Tyrell return to his work, his demeanor unchanged despite the remarkable scene that had just unfolded. Zoe took out her phone and snapped a discreet photo of Tyrell, then another of Derek's retreating figure. Something about the interaction stirred her reporter's instinct. There was a story here, one about skill versus status, about the personas people cultivated versus the talents they possessed. She slipped her phone back into her pocket and continued. Down the street, already composing headlines in her mind, back at his table, Tyrell served his next customer as if nothing unusual had happened. But something had shifted in the air around him, like the subtle adjustment he'd made to the Rolex's gears, small but significant, with consequences that would continue to unfold. The next morning dawned with unexpected momentum. Tyrell was setting up his table when an older man approached, newspaper in hand. You're in the news, Freeman, he said, pointing to a small column. Someone posted a video. Tyrell raised an eyebrow. What video? The answer came as a steady stream of curious onlookers began stopping by his table. By mid-morning, the sidewalk around his spot was busier than usual. Several people held their phones out, showing him the clip. Tyrell fixing the arrogant CEO's Rolex in minutes, followed by the man's ungracious retreat. The video had been posted by Zoe Chun with the caption, "Luxury CEO gets schooled by watch vendor." It had already accumulated thousands of views and shares. You should have kept that Rolex, one customer told him while Tyrell replaced her watch battery. Wasn't mine to keep, Tyrell replied simply. He never meant that offer. Around noon, Zoe herself appeared at Tyrell's table. She introduced herself properly this time, her press credentials visible on a lanyard. Mind if I ask you a few questions, Mr. Freeman? That video's taking off. Tyrell hesitated, then nodded. Long as I can work while we talk. They found a nearby bench during Tyrell's lunch break. Between bites of his sandwich, he answered Zoe's questions about his background. I wasn't always a street vendor, he admitted, his voice carrying a weight that suggested deeper waters. I used to work for Halverson Tech Mechanical Engineering Division, specialized in micromechanisms. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. Halverson? They're one of the biggest tech firms in the country. 18 years ago, I was part of their R&D team developing new watch movements. Tyrell's eyes grew distant. I noticed design flaws in a new line they were rushing to market. Safety issues. When I brought it up, they told me to sign off anyway. And you refused. Tyrell nodded. Couldn't put my name on something I knew would fail. They fired me, blacklisted me. Across the industry. Said I was difficult and lacking technical judgment. He gave a small, humorless laugh. After that, no engineering firm would touch me. That's wrongful termination, Zoe said, already taking notes. Maybe, but fighting a corporation takes money I didn't have. Had a baby daughter to think about after my wife passed. Zoe's fingers paused over her phone. I'm sorry. Life happens, Tyrell said, wrapping up the remainder of his sandwich. Found I could make enough fixing things for folks who needed it. Been doing it ever since. Back at his apartment that evening, Tyrell found Nia unusually quiet. She picked at her dinner, avoiding his gaze. What's going on with you? He asked gently. Some kids at school saw that video, she finally said. They're saying stuff. What kind of stuff? Like how my dad's just a street guy who got disrespected by some rich dude. Her voice cracked slightly. Jessica Wilson asked if we were homeless. Tyrell set down his fork. Nia, I know we're not, she said quickly. It's just sometimes. I wish you were using your brain for more than fixing cheap watches on the street. Tyrell was silent for a moment. You know why I do what I do. I know, Nia said. But I also know you helped design the Freeman circuit that's in half the smart devices today. You should have your name on buildings, not be working from a fold-out table. Buildings don't matter. You matter. Tyrell reached across the table and took her hand. College applications are next year. That's what we're working toward. Nia nodded, but her expression remained troubled. MIT's engineering program is $73,000 a year, Dad. How are we going to do that? Tyrell had no answer that wouldn't sound like a platitude. The truth was, he didn't know. His street business provided enough for their modest life, but not for the future Nia deserved. Meanwhile, in his penthouse apartment, Derek Langford was having a crisis of his own. The social media post had gained significant traction, appearing on multiple tech blogs, and even getting a mention on a morning news segment. This is a PR nightmare, his chief marketing officer explained during an emergency meeting. The optics are terrible. You came across as what? Derek snapped. His assistant, Melissa, cleared her throat. The comments are calling you elitist and out of touch. Shareholders are concerned about brand impact. Derek paced across his office, the Manhattan skyline a glittering backdrop to his fury. It was just some street vendor. Why is everyone making such a big deal about this? Because it's a perfect David versus Goliath story, his PR director explained. And right now, you're very much Goliath. What do you want me to do? Apologize to him? Give him a job? Derek laughed bitterly. The room fell silent, his team exchanging uncomfortable glances. Just ignore it, Derek decided. Next week, they'll be outraged about something else. This is nothing. But it wasn't nothing. The next day, Derek received an email from a major investor expressing concerns about leadership image and judgment. Later, at a lunch meeting, a potential partner made a joke about making sure their watches were working before Derek arrived. His irritation hardened into resentment. That night, he released a statement that only made things worse. While I appreciate skilled craftspeople, there's a reason some work on the street and others run billion-dollar companies. Expertise is about more than fixing a watch. The backlash was immediate. More videos appeared online, this time of Tyrell's regular customers defending him. An elderly woman described how Tyrell had fixed her late husband's watch when 3 shops had declared it beyond repair. A street performer explained how Tyrell had created a custom timing device for his act, charging him only for parts. Tyrell Freeman doesn't just fix watches, the performer said in the video. He fixes the things people care about. Can't put a price tag on that. The story continued to spread, catching Zoe Chen's attention once more. As a tech journalist, she recognized that the viral moment had opened a door, but the real story lay beneath the surface. She began investigating Tyrell's past in earnest, digging through patent registries and corporate archives. What she found stunned her. The Freeman circuit, she muttered, staring at her screen. The micro-timing mechanism that Tyrell had helped design before his dismissal from Halverson had gone on to become a cornerstone component in modern smartwatches and precision devices. Halverson had released it 2 years after firing him, with another engineer's name listed as the primary inventor. The market value of products containing the Freeman circuit over the past decade exceeded $2 billion. When Zoe brought this information to Tyrell's table, his expression remained impassive. That was a long time ago, was all he said. But don't you want recognition? Compensation? Zoe pressed. They're still using your design. Tyrell carefully polished the face of a vintage Timex. What I want is for my daughter to have choices. I didn't. Everything else is just noise. As the week progressed, Tyrell's sidewalk business saw an unexpected surge. Customers came from across the city, some bringing complex timepieces, others just wanting to meet the man from the video. He treated each the same. With careful attention and fair prices. One afternoon, a well-dressed woman approached his table. She introduced herself as Eleanor Sinclair, owner of Sinclair's Fine Jewelry on Fifth Avenue. Mr. Freeman, she said, I've been watching your work. We have a position for a master watchmaker and repair specialist at our flagship store. Private workshop, full benefits, salary starting at 6 figures. Several bystanders gasped. Tyrell looked up from the watch he was repairing. Appreciate the offer, Miss Sinclair, he said. But I'm not looking to work under anyone again. This would be your department to run as you see fit, she pressed. Tyrell shook his head. I need to build something that's mine. Something I can pass down. Thank you, though. After Eleanor left, an older vendor from a nearby hot dog stand whistled low. You just turned down a fortune, Freeman. Tyrell smiled slightly. Money's not the only kind of fortune, Jack. That night, Nia was waiting when Tyrell arrived home. She had his laptop open on the kitchen table, a look of barely contained excitement on her face. Dad, I did something. She turned the screen toward him. I've been filming you working, adding narration about what you're doing and why. Look, on screen was a YouTube channel called Fixer of Time. The first video showed Tyrell's hands in close-up, repairing a complex chronograph while Nia's voice explained each step. It had over 10,000 views. People are asking questions in the comments, she said. About techniques, about tools. I've been answering what I can. Tyrell sat down heavily, staring at the screen. When did you start this? 3 weeks ago. But after that viral thing with the CEO, it really took off. She looked at him nervously. Are you mad? Tyrell was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and pulled Nia into a hug. No, baby girl. I'm proud. You're building something too. The next morning, a familiar face appeared at Tyrell's table. It was Melissa, Derek Langford's assistant, looking nervously over her shoulder. Mr. Freeman, she said quietly, I need your help. She placed a velvet pouch on the table. Inside was Derek's Rolex. It's malfunctioning again. Mr. Langford sent it to the manufacturer, but they said it would take 3 weeks. He has a board presentation tomorrow, and she paused. He doesn't know I'm here. Tyrell studied the watch, then nodded. I'll have it done in an hour. No charge. Thank you, Melissa said, visibly relieved. I'll come back then. When she returned, Tyrell handed her the repaired Rolex. The issue was in the escapement mechanism. It should be fine now, but tell him to have it properly serviced soon. Melissa reached for her wallet, but Tyrell shook his head. Why are you doing this? She asked, puzzled. After how he treated you? A watch doesn't care who owns it, Tyrell replied. It just wants to run true. As Melissa walked away, Tyrell noticed Zoe Chin watching from across the street. She approached with a determined expression. I found something you should see, she said, showing him her phone screen. It displayed an email dated 18 years prior, sent from a Halverson Tech executive. Freeman needs to go. Too much integrity is bad for business. Handle it quietly. Tyrell stared at the screen, his face unreadable. Where did you get this? I have sources, Zoe said. And there's more. The Freeman circuit wasn't just used in watches. It became the foundation for their entire medical device division. Devices that save lives every day have your work inside them. For the first time since she'd met him, Zoe saw Tyrell's composure crack. He looked away, blinking rapidly. What are you going to do with this? He asked finally. That depends, Zoe replied. What do you want me to do with it? Tyrell gazed down at his weathered hands, the hands that had fixed countless broken things over the years. Then he looked up, his decision made. The truth, he said simply. It's time for the truth. As they talked, a new chapter was beginning to unfold. One where the quiet craftsman on the corner would reclaim not just his name, but the legacy that had been taken from him, one precise adjustment at a time. The morning after Tyrell and Zoe's conversation, Halverson Tech released an official statement. It appeared on their corporate website and was quickly picked up by tech publications across the internet. In response to recent social media speculation, Halverson Technologies wishes to clarify that no engineer was ever dismissed unfairly from our company. We maintain the highest ethical standards in all our business practices and stand behind our patent registry. Any claims to the contrary are baseless and potentially defamatory. Tyrell read the statement on his phone while setting up his table. His expression didn't change, but his movements became more deliberate, his focus sharper. He'd expected this, the corporate machine protecting itself. What he hadn't expected was the response from the public. They're lying, said a comment beneath the statement. I worked at Halverson during that time. Everyone knew what happened to Freeman. Similar comments multiplied across platforms. Former colleagues, some anonymous and some using their real names, began sharing fragments of the story. None had the complete picture, but together, they formed a damning mosaic. That evening, Tyrell returned home to find Nia bouncing with excitement. Dad, the channel hit 1 million views. She spun her laptop around to show him the screen. It was that clip of you fixing Mr. Wilson's vintage Patek Philippe. People can't believe you did it with just those 3 tools. Tyrell leaned over to look. The comments section overflowed with amazement and questions. How did he align that balance wheel with just a toothpick? This guy could fix the Mars rover with a paperclip and some dental floss. Someone get this man a proper workshop. Nia scrolled through the comments. People are asking for a P.O. box to send you watches. And this company wants to sponsor the channel. Tyrell shook his head. I'm not looking to become an internet celebrity, Nia. But Dad, don't you see? This could change everything. We could get a real shop, maybe even save enough for MIT. For a moment, Tyrell allowed himself to imagine it. A proper workspace with all the tools he'd once had access to, Nia attending her dream school. Then he pushed the thought aside. Let's just keep things simple for now, he said, though his resolve was wavering. The following days brought a steady stream of visitors to Tyrell's table. Watch enthusiasts traveled from other states. Collectors brought rare timepieces, and bloggers documented his work. Some offered large sums to buy out his time exclusively, while others proposed sponsorship deals for the channel. Tyrell declined. Them all. I serve whoever comes to my table, he explained. First come, first served. His integrity only fueled the growing mystique around him. The hashtag Fixer of Time trended nationally. Comments comparing his humble operation to Derek Langford's flashy tech company proliferated online at a Lang Tech Company party that weekend. Derek found himself cornered by Howard Jameson, a venture capitalist he'd been courting for months. Quite a week you've had, Derek, Howard said, swirling his whiskey. That street vendor's making quite a name for himself. Derek forced a laugh. It's just social media noise. Nobody will remember it by next week. I don't know, Howard replied. My teenage son showed me that YouTube channel. The guy's got skills. Maybe he should be running your tech division. The comment, delivered as a casual joke, landed like a slap. Derek excused himself shortly after, retreating to his office where he spent an hour scrolling through Tyrell's videos. His expression growing darker with each one. The next morning, Tyrell found an unexpected message in the email account Nia had set up for the channel. The producer of Tech Talk, a popular technology podcast, wanted him as a guest. I don't do interviews, Tyrell told Nia when she excitedly shared the news. Dad, she sat beside him at their small kitchen table. You always taught me that when something's broken, you fix it. Your reputation was broken when they pushed you out of Halverson. It's time to fix that too. Tyrell looked at his daughter, so young but already so wise. After a long moment, he nodded. All right, but just this one. The podcast interview was scheduled for the following week. Tyrell approached it with the same quiet focus he brought to his repair work. No preparation, no rehearsed lines, just honesty. Our guest today is Tyrell Freeman, the host began, a New York street vendor who recently went viral for fixing a luxury watch in minutes. But as we've discovered, there's much more to his story. Tyrell spoke calmly about his education at Georgia Tech, his early career, and his time at Halverson. He explained the technical issues he'd identified in the prototype watches, how the flawed design could cause batteries to overheat and potentially harm users. I didn't walk away from Halverson, he explained. I was pushed because I wouldn't compromise on safety. And now, years later, your design is in millions of devices, the host prompted. The Freeman circuit, yes, Tyrell acknowledged. Though they don't call it that anymore. Do you feel bitter about it? Tyrell considered the question. Bitterness is like rust. It eats away at you from the inside. I chose to rebuild instead, with what's in my hands, not what's on my wrist. The podcast aired on a Tuesday morning. By afternoon, it had been shared thousands of times. Media outlets picked up the story, running headlines like, The Watchman Who Fixed More Than Time, and Wall Street Vendor Has Billion-Dollar Brain. Comments poured in from people inspired by Tyrell's quiet dignity and resilience. Former colleagues reached out with apologies for not standing with him years ago. Engineering students cited him as an example of ethical practice in the field. The growing attention infuriated Derek. His company's stock had dipped slightly amid the negative publicity, and board members were asking uncomfortable questions about his public image. During a late-night call with his chief technology officer, his frustration boiled over. There has to be a way to shut this down, he demanded. Can't we get that YouTube channel taken offline? Copyright claim or something? Sir, we don't own any content they're using, the CTO explained cautiously. Then find another way. Derek hung up and immediately called a private tech security firm. His instructions were clear. Find vulnerabilities in the Fixer of Time channel and take it down. Discreetly. 2 days later, Nia discovered she couldn't access the channel. We've been hacked, she told her father. All our videos are gone. But Nia was more tech-savvy than the attackers anticipated. She had backups of every video and quickly implemented enhanced security measures. Within hours, the channel was back online, with a new video explaining the attack. The backlash was immediate. Zoe Chun began investigating the source of the hack, following digital breadcrumbs that led suspiciously close to Langtech. Meanwhile, the street vendor community rallied around Tyrell. On a rainy Thursday morning, he arrived at his usual spot to find something unexpected. His folding table had been replaced with a custom-built wooden workstation. It featured storage drawers, a reinforced top, and a weather-resistant canopy. Engraved along the edge were the words, "Time doesn't forget character." "We all chipped in," explained Jack from the hot dog stand. "Figure a craftsman needs proper tools." Tyrell ran his hand over the smooth wood, speechless. That night, as he and Nia discussed their next steps, a new idea took shape. The rental market in Brooklyn had shifted, opening up a small commercial space not far from their apartment. With the income from the growing YouTube channel, they could afford the first month's rent. "What if we took the business mobile?" Nia suggested. "Retrofit a van as a microlab. I handle the digital side, appointments, social media. You focus on repairs. We could call it Time Plus Craft." Tyrell looked at his daughter, seeing his own innovation reflected in her eyes, but with a modern twist he would never have envisioned. "Time Plus Craft," he repeated, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." As they planned their new venture, Derek Langford was becoming increasingly erratic. The hacking attempt had backfired, bringing even more attention to Tyrell's story. Several tech publications were now investigating the connection between the Freeman circuit and Halverson's subsequent success. The pressure mounted when a junior executive forwarded Derek an email. The organizers of Tech Fusion, a prestigious industry conference, had invited Tyrell Freeman to speak about innovation beyond corporate boundaries. The same conference had denied Derek's request to keynote just weeks earlier. That night, Derek stared at his reflection in his bathroom mirror, the fixed Rolex gleaming on his wrist. Something had to give. The story was spiraling beyond his control, and for the first time in his career, his money and influence weren't enough to contain it. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of a refurbished delivery van, now emblazoned with the Time Plus Craft logo. Inside, Tyrell had created a marvel of efficient design, a fully equipped watch repair lab on wheels, with storage for hundreds of parts, specialized tools organized on magnetic boards, and a workbench with precision lighting. "Ready for our first official day?" Nia asked, clipboard in hand. She had scheduled appointments across Manhattan, starting with longtime customers from Tyrell's street days. "Born ready," Tyrell replied, adjusting his new work apron. It was a gift from Nia, with Freeman embroidered across the chest. The mobile lab drew attention wherever it parked. Customers arrived at their scheduled times, often lingering to watch Tyrell work through the large side window Nia had installed for demonstrations. She recorded select repairs for the YouTube channel, which had transformed from simple repair videos into a documentary series titled The Hidden Craftspeople of New York. Each episode featured not only Tyrell, but other skilled workers operating outside traditional systems: a third-generation cobbler working from a basement shop, an immigrant electronics repair wizard, a woman who restored antique textiles from her apartment. People need to see that expertise doesn't always come with a fancy degree or a corner office, Nia explained to Zoe Chan, who had become a regular visitor and informal advisor. 3 weeks into their new business model, Time Plus Craft had a waiting list of over 200 clients. Meanwhile, across town, Derek Langford faced a different kind of pressure. Langtech had just released a software update for their luxury smartwatches, and something had gone catastrophically wrong. Thousands of the $6,000 devices were malfunctioning, displaying error messages, or shutting down completely. How the hell did this happen? Derek shouted at his development team. "We tested this update for months. The error only appears in certain usage environments," his CTO explained nervously. "Something about the timing mechanism, I don't care." "About the technical details," Derek interrupted. "Fix it now." But the technical details mattered. The engineers worked through the night, trying to identify the source of the failure. By morning, they had a theory but no solution. "It's in the interface between the analog movement and the digital processor," one explained. the same area where the Freeman circuit would normally handle the timing. Don't mention that name. Derek snapped. AS complaints flooded social media, and tech blogs ran stories about the failing watches. Langtech's stock price began to drop. Investors called emergency meetings. The board of directors summoned Derek to explain the situation. This is a temporary setback, he assured them. Our team will have a fix within days. And if they don't? Asked Franklin Wilson, the board chairman. These watches are our flagship product. The reputational damage is already significant. Perhaps, suggested another board member, we should consider bringing in outside consultants. Derek knew exactly who they were thinking of. Absolutely not, he said firmly. This is an internal matter. But as days passed with no solution, the pressure mounted. Derek dispatched a representative to approach Tyrell quietly, offering a substantial consulting fee to fix the issue anonymously. The representative found Tyrell working from his mobile lab in Soho. Mr. Langford is prepared to offer you $250,000 for 2 days of consulting work, he explained. Completely confidential, of course. No public association between you and Langtech. Tyrell listened to the offer, then slowly shook his head. I appreciate the opportunity, but I'll have to decline. Mr. Freeman, perhaps you don't understand the amount. I understand fine. Tyrell interrupted gently. But I don't fix silence. If Mr. Langford wants my help, he can ask for it himself, openly. The representative left empty-handed, and Derek's fury when he heard the response was explosive. He threw a glass across his office, barely missing his assistant. That same day, Zoe Chin published her full exposé on Tyrell's past and Halverson's corporate sabotage. The article detailed how the company had systematically erased Tyrell's contributions, altered patent applications, and profited enormously from his work. The story went global within hours. Tech forums exploded with discussions about intellectual property ethics. Engineering schools used the case in ethics classes. Former Halverson employees began speaking out, confirming details from the article that Tyrell's phone rang constantly. News outlets requested interviews. Law firms offered to represent him pro bono. Companies extended job offers with six-figure salaries. Through it all, Tyrell maintained his routine, fixing watches from his mobile lab, updating the YouTube channel with Nia, and politely declining most interview requests. Why aren't you capitalizing on this? Zoe asked him one afternoon. You could be making demands, filing lawsuits, building an empire. Tyrell adjusted his magnifying loupe as he examined a delicate pocket watch. Those things might come. But rushing never made a good watchmaker. The following week brought an unexpected development. The International Watchmakers Expo, the industry's most prestigious annual event, was being held in New York. Derek Langford had been scheduled as a keynote speaker months ago, set to introduce Langtech's next generation of luxury timepieces. Now, with the controversy swirling and Langtech watches failing, the organizers made an unusual decision. They contacted Tyrell, inviting him to share the keynote slot with Derek to provide balance to the narrative, as they put it. You should do it, Nia insisted when Tyrell showed her the invitation. Not my world, Tyrell replied. Those are corporate people, industry insiders. Exactly, Nia said. They need to hear from someone who sees time differently. After much consideration, Tyrell accepted. The announcement made headlines in the tech press. Street vendor and CEO to share stage at prestigious watch expo. Derek was livid when he learned of the arrangement, but was told bluntly by the organizers that his solo keynote was no longer an option, either share the stage or be replaced entirely. The day of the expo arrived with anticipation thick in the air. The main hall was packed, with additional screens set up in overflow rooms. Journalists and industry executives filled the front rows. Derek took the stage first, his demeanor forcefully confident despite the strain evident in his eyes. His speech began with his usual flair, extolling the virtues of luxury and exclusivity in the tech market. True innovation happens in state-of-the-art labs, not on street corners, he declared, an obvious jab at Tyrell. Anyone can tinker with existing technology, but creating something new, something that defines status, that requires vision and resources. He continued by dismissing what he called outsider craftsmanship, positioning it as quaint but ultimately irrelevant in the modern technological landscape. The future belongs to those who can scale, who can bring precision engineering to millions, not just repair one piece at a time. Derek concluded, his voice rising for emphasis. The applause was polite but restrained. Many in the audience shifted, uncomfortably, aware of the context behind his words. Then it was Tyrell's turn. He walked on stage in a simple button-up shirt and slacks, clean and pressed, but a stark contrast to Derek's tailored suit. He carried a small wooden box. Instead of going to the podium, Tyrell sat at a table that had been set up center stage. He placed the box down and opened it, revealing an array of watch repair tools and a single pocket watch. This timepiece belonged to James Attaway. Tyrell began, his voice calm but carrying clearly through the hall. He was born enslaved in 1832 and became a clockmaker after emancipation. He couldn't read or write, but he understood mechanics by feel and sound. The audience was utterly silent as Tyrell opened the back of the watch, revealing its intricate mechanism. An overhead camera projected the image onto large screens. This watch has been broken for 60 years, he continued. The man who designed it never got credit. His name isn't on the case or in any registry. But his genius is right here, in every gear and spring. With methodical precision, Tyrell began working on the watch. As his hands moved, he spoke about craftsmanship, about the invisible labor behind every innovation, about how time reveals truth if you're patient enough to wait for it. Then, to the audience's astonishment, Tyrell set aside his tools and tied a blindfold over his eyes. When you truly understand how something works, he said, you don't need to see it. You feel it. You hear it. You know it in your bones. His fingers moved with astonishing certainty, adjusting tiny components, cleaning, realigning. 10 minutes passed in breathless silence. Then Tyrell removed the blindfold, closed the watch case, and wound the crown. The distinct tick-tick-tick echoed through the microphone across the hall. Tyrell held up the now-functioning watch. This isn't about me or any one person. It's about respecting the craft and those who master it, no matter where they work or what title they hold. The true measure of value isn't in the price tag. It's in the precision of the hands that built it. The audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, sustained. In the back of the hall, Nia wiped tears from her eyes. Derek had already left the stage, his face a mask of contained fury. Headlines began appearing on tech sites within minutes. Craft over capital, Freeman over fraud, and street vendor steals. Show at Watch Expo. As the applause continued, Tyrell simply packed his tools, nodded his thanks to the audience, and walked off stage to where Nia waited. That was amazing, Dad, she whispered, taking his hand. Time always tells the truth, he replied quietly as they moved through the crowd toward the exit. Back in the green room, Derek slammed his hand against the wall. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from board members, investors, and his PR team. The Langtech brand was in freefall. The failed software update combined with today's public relations disaster had created a perfect storm. While Derek tried desperately to control the damage, a different conversation was happening across town. William Taylor, a prominent attorney who specialized in intellectual property cases, was meeting with Zoe Chun. The evidence you've gathered is compelling, Taylor said, reviewing the documents Zoe had collected. The timeline of events, the internal communications, the patent modifications. It all points to deliberate suppression of Freeman's contributions. So he has a case? Zoe asked. More than a case, Taylor confirmed. He has a bombshell. The statute of limitations hasn't expired because Halverson has continued to profit from the design. If Freeman decides to pursue this, it could be one of the most significant intellectual property cases in recent history. That evening, as Tyrell and Nia walked home from a celebratory dinner, they passed an electronics store with televisions in the window. On every screen was Tyrell's blindfolded demonstration from the expo, followed by clips of Derek leaving the stage. Look at that, Nia said, pointing to the crawl at the bottom of the screen. Langtech stock down 12% following expo debacle. CEO Derek Langford unavailable for comment. Tyrell just nodded, his mind elsewhere. The day's events had stirred something in him that had been dormant for years. Not ambition exactly, but purpose. A sense that perhaps his skills deserved a larger stage, not for his own glory, but for what they could teach others. They continued walking, Tyrell's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. "Mr. Freeman," said a voice. He didn't recognize. "My name is William Taylor. I'm an attorney specializing in intellectual property law. Zoe Chin suggested I call you." Tyrell listened as Taylor explained the potential case against Halverson Tech. The attorney's assessment was unambiguous. With the evidence now available, they could not only secure recognition for Tyrell's work, but also substantial compensation. For nearly 2 decades of denied royalties. "I'd like to represent you pro bono," Taylor concluded. "This case matters beyond just the financial aspects. It's about setting a precedent for how corporations treat innovators." Tyrell was quiet for so long that Taylor thought the call had dropped. Finally, he spoke. "Send me the details. I'll think about it." After hanging up, Nia looked at her father. Questioningly. "A lawyer," Tyrell explained. "Says we could sue Halverson for the Freeman Circuit. Maybe get your college paid for, and then some." Nia's eyes widened. "Are you going to do it?" Tyrell gazed up at the sky, where stars were just becoming visible despite the city lights. 18 years, he said softly. 18 years I've been fixing other people's broken things. Maybe it's time to fix what broke for us." The next day, the Time Plus Craft mobile lab was parked near its usual spot when a sleek black car pulled up alongside. The window lowered to reveal Derek Langford. "We need to talk, Freeman," he said, his voice tight. "Just the two of us." Tyrell studied him for a moment, then nodded toward a nearby coffee shop. 15 minutes. They sat across from each other. The contrast between them as stark as ever. Derek in his designer suit. Tyrell in his work clothes with a pen still tucked behind his ear. "I'll get straight to the point," Derek said. "This situation has gotten out of hand. I'm prepared to make you an offer. Consulting position at Langtech, 6 figures, full benefits. You can bring your daughter into our internship program." Tyrell took a sip of his coffee. "Why would you want me at your company, Derek?" "Because I'd rather have you inside the tent than outside throwing stones," Derek admitted bluntly. "And because, frankly, we need someone who understands the micro-timing issues in our watches. So this isn't about making things right. It's about damage control." Derek's expression hardened. "This is business, not a moral crusade. You get legitimacy and security. I get this PR nightmare to end." Tyrell set down his cup. 18 years ago, I stood my ground on a matter of principle and lost everything. If I gave in now just because the offer's better, what would that teach my daughter?" "For God's sake," Derek hissed, leaning forward. "Do you know what you're turning down? What kind of father puts principle above his child's future? The kind who wants his child to have principles worth standing on." Tyrell replied, evenly. Derek's face flushed. "I'm trying to be reasonable here, Freeman. But if you push this, if you file that lawsuit Zoe Chen's lawyer friend is preparing, I will bury you. My resources are endless. Your daughter will be in college before you see a dime." Tyrell stood up. "I appreciate the coffee, Mr. Langford. And the clarity." As he walked back to his mobile lab, Tyrell's phone buzzed with a text from William Taylor. "Ready when you are." Tyrell typed back a single word. "Ready." That night, Nia found her father at their kitchen table, surrounded by old notebooks and drawings, the archives of his engineering days that he'd kept stored away for years. "Dad, you okay?" Tyrell looked up, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "Better than okay. I've been fixing watches so long I forgot some things need breaking before they can be rebuilt right." Nia smiled slowly, understanding. "So we're doing this? We're really going after Halverson." "And Lang Tech," Tyrell added. "Turns out Derek's company has been using modified versions of my circuit design too. Probably why their watches are failing. They tried to cut corners where the design doesn't allow for it." He showed her a schematic he'd drawn, pointing to a tiny section. "See this? This is the heart of it all. The Freeman Circuit. Time to bring it home." The following morning, William Taylor filed the lawsuit, Freeman versus Halverson Technologies and Langtech Industries. By noon, it was trending across social media and financial news networks. Derek was in a board meeting when his phone began vibrating with urgent messages. He excused himself to take a call from his legal team. "How bad is it?" he demanded. "Bad," his chief counsel replied. "The evidence is substantial. The timing is terrible for us given the current failures, and Freeman has public sympathy on his side." "I don't care about sympathy," Derek snapped. "Can we win?" The pause on the other end of the line told him everything he needed to know. When he returned to the boardroom, The atmosphere had changed. Board members were looking at their phones, murmuring among themselves. Franklin Wilson, the chairman, fixed Derek with a cold stare. Care to explain why we're just learning about this lawsuit from Twitter, Derek? Or why our flagship product is failing because of a design flaw you apparently stole from a man you publicly humiliated? Derek opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For once in his career, he had no angle, no spin, no way to talk himself out of the corner he'd backed into. Time, it seemed, had finally caught up with him. The day after the Watch Expo, Tyrell's blindfolded repair demonstration dominated tech news. Video clips spread across social media platforms with captions like, "The moment time stopped for Derek Langford." Industry blogs analyzed every second of Tyrell's performance, marveling at his precision and knowledge. Meanwhile, Derek Langford retreated to Lang Tech headquarters, where his PR team had set up an emergency response center. After hours of strategy meetings, they produced a polished video featuring Derek in casual attire, looking directly into the camera with practiced sincerity. "I want to address recent events involving myself and street vendor Tyrell Freeman," he began. "In the fast-paced world of technology, we sometimes forget the value of craftsmanship. I respect Mr. Freeman's skills and regret our misunderstanding." The apology might have worked if not for what happened next. Less than an hour after the video went live, a tech blogger unearthed footage from months earlier. Derek at a private investor dinner, wine glass in hand, laughing as he described sidewalk repairmen as relics of a dying era. "These guys fixing watches on the street," Derek said in the clip, "they're like human fax machines in a world of email." The internet erupted again. Derek's carefully crafted apology collapsed under the weight of his previous condescension. Hashtag Langford Lies began trending alongside hashtag Fixer of Time. Tyrell, however, was focused elsewhere. His phone rang while he was servicing a 1940s Bulova in the Time Plus craft van. "Mr. Freeman." The voice was hesitant, elderly. "My name is Walter Simmons. I worked at Halverson Tech for 32 years before retiring, in the microengineering division." Tyrell's hand stilled. "I remember you, Mr. Simmons. You were on the senior design team." "Yes," the old man continued. "I've been following your story. What they did to you, I was there. I had the original documentation from your patent application, the one before they modified it." Tyrell gripped the phone tightly. "You kept that. I couldn't stop what happened, but I couldn't destroy the evidence either. I've had it in my safety deposit box all these years." Walter paused. "I'd like to give it to you, son. It's time." The documents Walter Simmons provided became the cornerstone of Tyrell's case, irrefutable proof that his name had been deliberately removed from the original watch microcircuit patent 18 years ago. The paperwork showed Tyrell's signature on preliminary approvals, his detailed notes on the margins of schematics, and most damning of all, an internal memo discussing the removal of Freeman from documentation before the final patent filing. William Taylor, Tyrell's attorney, reviewed the evidence with growing confidence. "This is exactly what we needed," he told Tyrell. "With this, we have a solid foundation to challenge both Halverson's original patent fraud and Lang Tech's use of derivative technology." As legal proceedings began, Tyrell received an unexpected email from MIT's Department of Engineering. The message was brief but significant. "Dear Mr. Freeman, in light of recent revelations about your contributions to microengineering, we would like to invite you to speak at our upcoming symposium on applied legacy craftsmanship in modern technology. The department would be honored to host you, particularly as we acknowledge that the fellowship once offered to you was rescinded under circumstances we now understand to have been unjust." Tyrell stared at the screen, memories washing over him. 20 years ago, he had been accepted to MIT's prestigious engineering program, only to have his fellowship withdrawn after Halverson executives made calls questioning his technical abilities. It was the first domino in the long cascade of his career's destruction. "Are you going to accept?" Nia asked, reading over his shoulder. "I don't know," Tyrell admitted. "That's a world I walked away from a long time ago." "No, Dad," Nia corrected gently. "That's a world that pushed you away." Big difference. While Tyrell considered the invitation, Zoe Chen published what would become her most influential piece yet. Titled "The Genius Who Sold Time on a Table," The article provided a comprehensive account of Tyrell's journey from promising engineer to street vendor to unlikely public figure. It explored themes of corporate ethics, hidden talent, and resilience in the face of institutional barriers. The article was picked up by major news outlets and sparked global conversation about the overlooked innovators working in the margins of society. Tech forums debated the ethics of patent law. Engineering schools added the case study to their curriculum. Social scientists pointed to Tyrell's story as evidence of systemic obstacles facing Black professionals in STEM fields. Through it all, Tyrell maintained his daily routine of repairs, now operating from the Time Plus craft van. He declined most interview requests but agreed to a short statement for Zoe's article. "I fix things because they deserve to work as intended." That's true for watches, and it's true for systems too. The growing public attention affected Nia as well. Initially hesitant about her father's newfound recognition, she gradually embraced her role in telling his story. When invited to speak at a youth tech summit, she delivered a speech that resonated far beyond the auditorium. "My dad didn't just fix watches," she said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "He fixed my belief in people. He showed me that skill doesn't need validation from power to be valuable. That patience isn't weakness. It's the strength to wait until the right moment to make your move." Video of her speech circulated widely, adding another dimension to the Freeman narrative. Father and daughter were increasingly seen as symbols of integrity and perseverance in a world that often valued flash over substance. Derek Langford watched his carefully constructed reputation crumble from his penthouse apartment. Langtech's stock continued to fall as more customers reported problems with their luxury watches. The board called emergency meetings that Derek increasingly struggled to control. His behavior grew erratic. He fired several senior executives who questioned his strategies. During a product planning session, he threw a prototype across the room when an engineer mentioned a timing circuit similar to the Freeman design. An executive assistant recorded his tirade and leaked the audio to a tech blog. "I don't give a damn about some street repairman," Derek shouted in the recording. "Our customers are idiots who'll pay thousands for our logo. They don't care how it works as long as it looks expensive." The recording spread quickly, reaching potential customers who were decidedly not idiots. Pre-orders for Langtech's next product line were canceled en masse. As Derek's world unraveled, Tyrell and William Taylor finalized their legal strategy. The official complaint was comprehensive: patent infringement, unjust enrichment, wrongful termination, defamation, and corporate sabotage. The damages sought were substantial, not just financial compensation for lost royalties, but official recognition of Tyrell's role in creating the Freeman circuit. When news of the lawsuit broke, tech and business publications featured it prominently. Legal experts weighed in, most suggesting that Halverson and Langtech faced an uphill battle given the evidence and public sentiment. The night before the first court appearance, Tyrell sat with Nia on their apartment balcony, gazing at the Brooklyn skyline. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he said, "I want you to know I'm proud of you. Taking this channel from nothing to millions of viewers. Standing up when I was ready to stay quiet. I learned from the best," Nia replied, leaning against his shoulder. Tyrell smiled. "Your mom would have loved seeing you like this. She always said you had her fire and my focus." Dangerous combination. As they shared the moment of quiet reflection, Derek Langford was pacing his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear as he argued with his lead attorney. "I don't care what the evidence shows," he insisted. "I want this buried. Use whatever connections you have with the judge. This cannot go to trial." "Mr. Langford," the attorney replied wearily, "I don't think you understand the situation. The evidence is overwhelming, and with the current media attention, I'm not paying you to tell me what can't be done," Derek snapped. "Either find a way to make this disappear, or I'll find someone who will." After hanging up, Derek stared at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights spread out below him, a kingdom he had once ruled effortlessly. Now it all seemed to be slipping through his fingers like sand. In a moment of desperate inspiration, he pulled up a messaging app on his phone and sent Tyrell a direct challenge. "Let's end this circus. You and me, on camera, a debate about innovation and ownership. Winner takes all." Across the city, Tyrell read the message with a slight shake of his head. His response was simple: "I won't debate you, Derek. I'll let the truth tick loud enough to hear." The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and onlookers as Tyrell arrived with William Taylor and Nia. Though cameras weren't permitted inside the courtroom, the case had captured public imagination to such an extent that people lined up hoping to get seats in the gallery. Inside, the contrast between the legal teams was stark. Halverson Tech and Lang Tech had assembled a wall of attorneys in expensive suits, armed with stacks of documents and digital presentations. Tyrell's side consisted of William Taylor, two associate attorneys, and a single technical expert. As the proceedings began, Judge Eleanor Winters made it clear she would tolerate no theatrics. "This courtroom is not a continuation of the media circus outside," she stated firmly. "We will focus exclusively on facts and law." Over the following days, witnesses for Tyrell took the stand one by one. Former Halverson engineers testified to his exceptional skill and the critical role he played in developing the microcircuit. Street customers described his remarkable ability to repair complex timepieces with minimal tools. Academic experts confirmed that the Freeman circuit represented a genuine innovation that had advanced the entire field of microtiming. The most dramatic testimony came from Marcus Hendricks, a former Halverson executive who had been directly involved in Tyrell's dismissal. "Yes, we deliberately removed his name from the patent," Hendricks admitted under oath, his voice barely audible. "The directive came from upper management. Freeman had refused to approve a flawed design, and they wanted him gone. But they also knew his circuit design was too valuable to lose." Derek's legal team attempted to discredit the witnesses, suggesting they were motivated by personal grievances or swayed by media attention. Their efforts gained little traction when Tyrell himself took the stand. The courtroom fell completely silent. He spoke clearly and factually about his work at Halverson, the development of the circuit, and his subsequent years as a street vendor. During cross-examination, Derek's lead attorney tried to paint Tyrell as unstable and unqualified. "Mr. Freeman, you claim to have created a sophisticated timing circuit, yet you've spent the last 18 years fixing cheap watches on the street. Why should the court believe you have the technical expertise you claim?" Tyrell answered with unexpected precision. "The Freeman circuit utilizes a quantum tunneling effect at the junction between the timing oscillator and power management system. This creates a self-calibrating loop that adjusts for temperature and power fluctuations at a scale of 0.0003 Hz. The patent as filed omits this key element, which is why derivatives like those used in Langtech watches are experiencing cascade failures when operating at temperatures above 85 degrees Fahrenheit. The technical specificity of his answer left the attorney speechless. Even the judge appeared impressed by the depth of Tyrell's knowledge. The decisive moment came when Tyrell presented his evidence, an old, leather-bound notebook containing hand-drawn schematics dated 18 months before Halverson's patent filing. The drawings matched the circuitry in the final patent down to the micron. "I designed this circuit at my kitchen table," Tyrell explained. "You can see my daughter's crayon marks on some pages. She was just learning to draw then." Derek Langford's testimony came next. Initially composed, he spoke confidently about Langtech's independent development process. But under William Taylor's methodical questioning, cracks began to appear in his narrative. "So you're claiming," Taylor pressed, "that your company coincidentally developed a timing circuit identical to the Freeman circuit, down to the specific arrangement of microconnectors." "We improved on existing technology," Derek insisted. "That's not theft, it's innovation. And the fact that your watches are now failing precisely because of modifications to the self-calibration system Mr. Freeman just described, that's also coincidence." Derek's composure slipped. "Look, we're a major technology company. We don't steal from street vendors. Mr. Freeman wasn't always a street vendor, was he? When he designed this circuit, he was a senior engineer at Halverson Tech." "That's irrelevant," Derek snapped. The point, Mr. Langford," Taylor interrupted, "is that your company knowingly used stolen intellectual property, then modified it incompetently, resulting in product failures that have cost your shareholders millions. Isn't that correct?" "This is ridiculous," Derek said, his voice rising. "You're twisting everything to fit your client's delusional." "Mr. Langford," Judge Winters cut in sharply, "control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." Derek glared at the judge. With all due respect, Your Honor, this entire proceeding is a waste of the court's time. A real judge would have dismissed this case months ago. The courtroom went silent. Judge Winters removed her glasses slowly. Mr. Langford, you are held in contempt of court. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Langford to a holding cell until he remembers the respect this court deserves. As Derek was led away, protesting loudly, his legal team visibly deflated. The damage was done. 3 days later, Judge Winters delivered her ruling. The courtroom was packed as she read her decision. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Tyrell Freeman. A murmur ran through the gallery. Halverson Technologies is ordered to amend all relevant patents to include Tyrell Freeman as primary inventor. Langtech Industries is ordered to cease use of the infringing technology and pay appropriate licensing fees for past usage. Furthermore, compensatory damages in the amount of $18 million are to be paid to Mr. Freeman for lost royalties and professional harm. Tyrell sat motionless as William Taylor squeezed his shoulder. Nia grabbed her father's hand, tears streaming down her face. Additionally, the judge continued, given the evidence of deliberate fraud in the original patent application, this court refers the matter to the federal prosecutor's office for potential criminal charges against former Halverson executives. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as Tyrell emerged. Cameras flashed and questions overlapped in a chaotic chorus. William Taylor stepped forward to handle the press, while Tyrell stood quietly with Nia. Today, justice was served not just for Tyrell Freeman, but for every innovator whose contributions have been erased by corporate power, Taylor announced. The court has recognized what many already knew, that genius doesn't require a corner office, and that truth, like time itself, cannot be permanently stopped. As Tyrell and Nia made their way through the crowd, they saw Derek being escorted to a car by his security team. Protesters shouted "Time's up" and "Pay what you owe" as photographers captured his expression of barely contained rage that evening. As the verdict dominated news cycles, Tyrell received an invitation to appear on The Night Show, one of the country's most popular late-night talk programs. After discussing it with Nia, he accepted. "Just be yourself, Dad," she advised as they waited backstage. "That's what got us here." The host welcomed Tyrell warmly, and the audience gave him a standing ovation. When they settled, the questions began. "So, Mr. Freeman, how does it feel to win such a massive case against two corporate giants?" Tyrell considered the question. "It feels correct, like when a watch that's been running slow finally keeps proper time again. Many people would be celebrating, maybe buying a mansion or a yacht," the host suggested. "What's next for you?" "I didn't do this to win," Tyrell replied. "I did it so my daughter never sees silence win again." He glanced toward the wings where Nia watched. "The money matters because it secures her future, her education. But the principle matters more. That's what lasts. And time plus craft? Will you keep fixing watches from a van now that you're a millionaire?" Tyrell smiled. "I'm planning something bigger. Training centers in underserved communities. Teaching young people that working with your hands isn't just a fallback. It's a foundation. You fix things out there, you can fix things in here." He tapped his chest. As the interview concluded, social media exploded with support. Hashtag #FixerOfTime trended again, this time accompanied by hashtag Freeman's Legacy. Over the following weeks, the landscape shifted dramatically. Derek resigned as CEO of Langtech after major investors withdrew support. Halverson Tech's stock tumbled as the company faced additional lawsuits from other former employees emboldened by Tyrell's victory. Meanwhile, Time Plus Craft transformed from a mobile repair service into a growing business with a physical location in Brooklyn. Tyrell hired 3 apprentices, all from backgrounds similar to his own, and began training them in both traditional watchmaking and modern micro-dash engineering. And no longer did Tyrell need to work from a folding table or worry about Nia's college tuition. Yet he maintained the same careful approach to his craft, the same respect for each timepiece that came into his workshop. One afternoon, Tyrell took a rare break and walked past the spot where his street table had once stood. To his surprise, he found a small plaque had been installed on the sidewalk, site of Time Plus Craft Origins, where Tyrell Freeman showed that every second counts. He stood looking at it for a long moment, then continued walking, aware that while one chapter of his story had closed, another was just beginning to tick forward, precise and purposeful as the watches he had spent his life repairing. 6 months after the court victory, Tyrell sat in his new office overlooking the Brooklyn workshop, where Time Plus Craft had taken root. The space hummed with activity. 3 workstations occupied by apprentices, a small classroom area for teaching repair techniques, and a digital lab where Nia managed their expanding online presence. The phone on Tyrell's desk rang. It was William Taylor. Good news, Tyrell. The settlement funds have been fully transferred. $18 million, as ordered by the court. Tyrell took a deep breath. Despite the victory, part of him still couldn't believe this moment had arrived. Thank you, William, for everything. My pleasure. Have you decided what you'll do first? Tyrell glanced at the envelope on his desk, a college acceptance letter addressed to Nia Freeman. Yes, I have. Later that evening, Tyrell and Nia sat at their kitchen table, which was covered with official-looking documents. This familiar space, where they had eaten thousands of meals together during leaner times, now served as the planning center for their future. So Stanford Engineering, Tyrell said, still processing the reality. My baby girl heading to California. Nia beamed, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. It's so far away, Dad. That's the point, Tyrell said gently. You've got to go where your mind can stretch. No limits. The full scholarship means we can use the settlement money for Time Plus Craft, Nia pointed out, shuffling through business proposals. The Baltimore and Detroit locations looked promising. The expansion plans were ambitious. Each new Time Plus Craft center would operate with the same principles as Tyrell's original street table: fair prices, quality work, and respect for the craft. The difference was scale. Each location would include a repair shop, a training center for aspiring technicians, and a small manufacturing space for custom parts. I've been thinking about who should manage them, Tyrell said. I want people who understand what it means to rebuild. His list included James Washington, a former street vendor from Baltimore who repaired electronics, and Darius Taylor, an ex-inmate who had learned watchmaking through a prison rehabilitation program. Both had already accepted his offer, eager for the opportunity to transform their skills into sustainable businesses. I had another idea, Nia said hesitantly. What if we created a scholarship? Second hands, for kids from underrepresented backgrounds who want to learn engineering or repair skills. Tyrell looked at his daughter with pride. That's perfect. You'll run it. From school, yeah? I thought maybe 5 full scholarships to start, focusing on youth from neighborhoods like ours. The next morning brought another significant letter. This one from MIT, confirming details for Tyrell's upcoming keynote address. After initially hesitating, he had accepted their invitation to speak about his journey and the future of craftsmanship in the digital age. As the date approached, Tyrell spent evenings drafting his speech, something that didn't come naturally to the typically reserved craftsman. Nia found him one night surrounded by crumpled paper. Writer's block? She asked. Tyrell nodded. They want me to talk about failure and resilience. How do you put 18 years into 20 minutes? Nia sat beside him. Tell them about the broken clock from Mrs. Abernathy. Tyrell smiled at the memory. Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly widow, had brought him her husband's broken anniversary clock during his early days as a street vendor. She had visited 3 repair shops, all of which had declared it beyond saving. Tyrell had spent days researching the obscure German movement, then fabricated a replacement part from scratch using modified dental tools. When I returned it to her and she heard it chime again, Tyrell's voice caught slightly. She said it was like hearing her husband's voice one more time. That's what you talk about, Nia said. Not the patents or the court case. The moments that mattered while the world wasn't watching. The MIT auditorium was filled to capacity when Tyrell took the stage 2 weeks later. Faculty, students, industry, leaders, and media representatives watched as the man once denied entry to this prestigious institution prepared to address them. Tyrell adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath, and began not with his achievements, but with his darkest moment. 18 years ago, I stood in a parking lot with a cardboard box containing my personal items from Halverson Tech. My career was over. My reputation was destroyed. I had a 2-year-old daughter at home and no prospects. The audience was silent. As Tyrell described his journey, the initial desperation, the small folding table, the first watch he repaired on the street. He spoke about failure not as an event, but as a teacher, about resilience not as an abstract virtue, but as a daily practice. Dignity isn't given by titles or taken by setbacks, he said, his voice resonating through the hall. It's built one repair at a time, one honest interaction at a time. As he concluded, Tyrell held up a small gear between his fingers, gleaming under the stage lights. This is from the first watch I ever fixed on that street corner. I keep it to remember that even when the mechanism of our lives seems broken, we can rebuild, sometimes with better parts than before. The silence that followed lasted 3 seconds. Then the audience rose as one, applause thundering through the auditorium. The standing ovation continued for 4 full minutes, with some professors wiping tears from their eyes. Later that week, another honor arrived unexpectedly. The International Watchmaking Federation, a prestigious body based in Switzerland, announced that Tyrell Freeman would become the first non-European inducted into their Hall of Craftsmanship. Mr. Freeman represents the highest ideals of our profession, the announcement stated. His work demonstrates that true innovation honors tradition, while embracing progress. As time plus craft grew, new faces joined the team. Most notable was 12-year-old Malik Johnson, who had begun visiting Tyrell's street table 2 years earlier, watching silently for hours as repairs were performed. "You got questions? Ask them," Tyrell had told the boy one day. "Can't learn by just looking." Now Malik was Time Plus Craft's youngest apprentice, arriving after school 3 days a week. Under Tyrell's guidance, he had begun designing his own line of hybrid watches, analog faces with subtle digital enhancements. "The kid's got a gift," Tyrell told Nia during one of their video calls. She was settled into her dorm at Stanford. By then, excelling in her engineering courses while managing the second-hand scholarship program remotely. "Like someone else I know," Nia replied with a smile. One morning, Tyrell received an unexpected email from Halverson Technologies. With new leadership following the scandal, the company was implementing major changes. The message invited Tyrell to return as a senior consultant, overseeing ethical standards in their engineering division. Tyrell drafted a polite response. "Thank you for considering me for this position. While I appreciate the gesture toward reconciliation, I must decline. I'm building my own legacy now. I wish Halverson success in its renewed commitment to ethical innovation." Tyrell Freeman. As spring approached, Nia returned home for her first college break. Tyrell picked her up at the airport, barely recognizing the confident young woman who strode toward him, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "You look different," he said, hugging her. "Good different?" she asked. "Grown different," he replied, helping with her luggage. That weekend, Nia spoke at her former high school's graduation. The same school where she had once been mocked for her father being just a street guy, now proudly introduced her as their distinguished alumna. "My journey began watching my father fix broken things," Nia told the graduates. "What I didn't understand then was that he was teaching me the most important lesson: how to fix what seems unfixable, how to rebuild what others abandon." She looked directly at Tyrell in the audience. "My father turned shame into science. He transformed exclusion into excellence. And he taught me that no matter how small you start, precision and patience can change the world." As Tyrell listened to his daughter's words, he thought about the long path they had traveled together. From their small apartment, with its makeshift workbench, to this moment of vindication and possibility. The journey hadn't been linear or easy, but like the mechanisms he repaired, each part had ultimately connected to create something that worked. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, another journey was unfolding. Derek Langford, once the celebrated CEO of a billion-dollar company, now sat alone in a sparsely furnished apartment. His designer suits hung unworn in the closet. His luxury watches, including the infamous Rolex, had been sold to cover legal fees. After being removed from Langtech's board and resigning in disgrace, Derek had attempted to launch a new venture, but his reputation preceded him. Investors declined meetings. Former colleagues didn't return calls. That morning, Derek sat at his kitchen table, scrolling through job listings on his laptop. His appearance had changed, beard unshaven, hair longer and graying at the temples. Without the trappings of wealth and power, he looked older, more Ordinary that he paused at a listing for a tech mentor position at a small startup. The role was entry-level, the salary modest. With slight hesitation, he clicked Apply, attaching a resume that omitted his recent past. The name at the top read simply D. Langford. No one would recognize him now. That was the plan. The cover of Time magazine featured a close-up photograph of Tyrell Freeman's hands holding a vintage pocket watch. His face was visible in the background, expression serious but serene. The headline read, "The Man Who Fixed More Than Watches." The feature story traced Tyrell's journey from promising engineer to street vendor to founder of what was now being called the Freeman Method, a combination of traditional craftsmanship and innovative thinking that was influencing fields far beyond watchmaking. Tyrell kept a copy of the magazine in his office, but rarely looked at it. Despite his growing public profile, he remained focused on the work itself, spending more time in the workshop than in meetings. Mr. Freeman, one of his apprentices, Sarah Williams, knocked on his open door. "The team from the city planning office is here." Tyrell nodded, putting aside the antique chronograph he'd been restoring. "Thanks, Sarah. I'll be right out." The meeting concerned a public installation, a large street clock to be placed at the corner where Tyrell had worked. For so many years, the city had commissioned it as part of an initiative to honor local figures who had made significant contributions to New York's culture. "We're thinking bronze for the casing," explained the project manager, spreading blueprints across the conference table. "And we'd like your input on the mechanism. It should be something special." Tyrell studied the designs thoughtfully. "I'd like it to be transparent," he suggested. "Glass panels so people can see how it works." "Educational." "Perfect," the manager agreed. "And the inscription?" Tyrell considered for a moment. "Just 3 words. Precision, patience, purpose." 2 months later, a crowd gathered for the clock's unveiling. City officials, local vendors, former customers, and students from nearby schools watched as Tyrell and Nia pulled a cord, revealing the magnificent timepiece. 10 feet tall with a transparent casing that showcased its intricate gears and mechanisms, the clock stood as a testament to the value of visible craftsmanship. The plaque at its base read, "Tyrell Freeman Clock. Precision, patience, purpose." As people dispersed after the ceremony, Tyrell received a call from Brazil. A community organization there had implemented a training program based on time plus crafts model, teaching watchmaking and electronics repair to youth in favelas. "We have 15 students already," the program director explained excitedly. "And we've received inquiries from similar groups in Ghana and India." Though Tyrell declined to franchise the Time Plus craft name internationally, he freely shared training materials, tool recommendations, and business strategies with these grassroots initiatives. What mattered wasn't ownership of the idea, but its implementation wherever it could create opportunity. Back at the Brooklyn workshop, Tyrell was surprised to find a familiar face among a group of job applicants. Brian Foster, one of the Halverson engineers who had testified against him during the patent dispute. "Mr. Freeman," Foster began awkwardly, "I don't expect you to hire me. I just wanted to apologize in person. I should have spoken up 18 years ago. I knew what they were doing to you wasn't right." Tyrell studied the man's face, seeing genuine remorse and something else, desperation. Foster had been let go during Halverson's post-scandal restructuring. "We need a regional director for the Detroit location," Tyrell said finally. "Someone who knows both the corporate and technical sides." Interested, Foster looked stunned. "After everything, you trust me with that?" "I'm not offering because I trust you," Tyrell replied honestly. "I'm offering because everyone deserves a second chance to get it right. I should have listened sooner is a good place to start." As Time Plus Craft's business side expanded, Tyrell found himself increasingly drawn back to the pure craft of watchmaking. He converted the garage behind his modest new house into a personal workshop where he built custom timepieces, not for profit, but for meaning. Working alongside Nia during her visits home, he created watches to mark significant life events for people: weddings, births, major anniversaries. "It's like we're making time tangible for them," Nia observed as they completed a watch for a 50th wedding anniversary. "Something they can hold in their hands." Tyrell nodded. "Time's the one thing you can't buy more of. But maybe you can make what you have count more." On a crisp autumn morning, Tyrell received an unusual call from the American Watchmaking Museum. The curator explained that they had acquired an item of significant historical interest, a Rolex Daytona that had been identified as the Freeman Rolex, the watch from the viral video that had started everything. It was found in a donation box at a charity auction, the curator explained. We'd like your permission to display it with a plaque explaining its significance. Tyrell was silent for a moment, struck by the strange symmetry of the watch's journey. The plaque should read, repaired by Freeman. Return to time. He suggested finally 1 year to the day after the court ruling. Tyrell and Nia sat on a bench outside their flagship store in Brooklyn, watching families gather around a sidewalk table they had installed for community use. On weekends, Time Plus Craft offered free basic repair lessons, teaching children and adults how to fix common household items rather than discarding them. Look at that, Tyrell said, nodding toward a young girl carefully reattaching the arm of a teddy bear under the guidance of Sarah Williams, now a full instructor. Reminds me of you at that age. Nia smiled. I was thinking about Mom today, about how she always said you had magic in your hands. She'd be so proud to see all this. Tyrell nodded, emotion briefly tightening his throat. His late wife had been gone for 16 years, but her belief in him had sustained him through the darkest times. I've been working on something, he said, reaching into his pocket. He handed Nia a small wooden box. Open it when you're back. At school. Later that night, in her dorm room at Stanford, Nia opened the box. Inside was a beautiful handcrafted watch with an inscription on the back. For Nia, who taught me that sometimes the second hand matters most. Love, Dad. The watch contained a miniaturized version of the Freeman circuit, perfectly adapted to the analog movement. A masterpiece of integration between old and new technologies. Tears filled Nia's eyes as she secured it around her wrist, feeling its gentle tick against her pulse. The final chapter of Tyrell's public story came in the form of a documentary titled Time and Craft, The Freeman Legacy. Filmmakers had followed him for months, capturing the growth of his business, his teaching methods, and the global impact of his approach to craftsmanship. In the film's closing interview, Tyrell sat in his personal workshop, surrounded by the tools and timepieces that had defined his life. Some people think time is rigid, he said, holding a vintage pocket watch to the light. But watchmakers know different. Time can be adjusted, calibrated, even reset when necessary. He paused, his weathered hands still steady and precise after decades of delicate work. A clock's hands only move forward. So should we. As the credits rolled, the film transitioned to a montage of people around the world engaged in acts of repair. A grandmother in Ghana teaching children to fix radios. A teenager in Brazil rebuilding a computer. A group of women in Detroit restoring vintage clocks. The final scene returned to Tyrell, now sitting on a park bench as a young boy approached with a broken toy car. Can you fix it, mister? The child asked. Tyrell examined the toy, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a paperclip. With a few deft movements, he repaired the axle and handed it back. See? He said as the boy's face lit up with delight. Now it works again. The screen faded to black, with only the sound of a ticking watch remaining. Then simple white text appeared. Not everyone wears time on their wrist. Some carry it in their hands. In an apartment across town, a man watched the documentary's end credits roll. Derek Langford, now simply D. Langford, junior project manager at a small tech startup, switched off his television and looked down at his wrist. Where a $35,000 Rolex had once sat was now a simple Timex, practical and unremarkable that he walked to his window, gazing out at the city where he had once believed himself untouchable. The giant street clock was visible in the distance, its illuminated face marking the hour for all to see. Derek turned away and moved to a small desk where blueprints for a new kind of timing mechanism lay spread out. His designs were rough, amateur compared to Freeman's work, but they represented something he had never valued before. The humble beginning of genuine creation. He picked up a pencil and began to make adjustments, working carefully, precisely, learning, at last, the patience that true craftsmanship required. Time, as it always does, continued to tick forward. And in its steady rhythm, even the most unlikely characters found opportunities for repair. Have you ever wondered what genius might be hidden in the people you pass by without a second glance? Like and subscribe for more stories about overlooked brilliance, and the moments when time finally reveals what truly matters.